So, The Hobbit. I listened to it on Audible. Kids fantasy. It's the precursor to Lord of the Rings, that worldwide famous trilogy. And The Hobbit was also a film trilogy after the Lord of the Rings, in which they stretched out this book, which is only about 300 pages long, into three-hour movies. And after reading the book, I'd seen the films, after reading the book, I noticed that there's a lot of stuff in the films that didn't happen in the book, and it feels like the films now, I have a much lower opinion of the films having read the book. If you don't know the story, Bilbo Baggins, relative of Frodo Baggins from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Hobbit is set before. He is a hobbit. He likes his home, he likes his comfort, he likes his life of solitude and comfort, and obviously lives in the Shire. And one day he gets tricked by Gandalf, the wizard, into joining Gandalf and joining 12 dwarves whose names I struggle to remember all of them. I barely even remember the 7 dwarves from Snow White, so remembering 12 is going to be another story. Biffa, Boffa, Bomber, Thorin, Philly and Killy, and that's about as far as I get. But anyway, he accompanies them on a journey to see some treasure from a dragon's cave, a dragon's lair in the mountains. And each chapter in the book introduces, or most of the chapters introduce, some new creature, some new monster, some new being, and it expands ever so slightly on Tolkien's world, Tolkien's Middle Earth. And this is very much a kid's book. The Lord of the Rings saga is very much more adult orientated. This is much more a kid's book. So, for instance, in Lord of the Rings, death is a threat that is everywhere, and it's depicted much more brutally, much more bluntly. Death is a threat in The Hobbit, but it's not as direct, not as brutal as in the Lord of the Rings. So it's depicted as a threat, but it's a lot more subtle, and it's definitely aimed towards kids of a certain age, this book. And we see it all in here. We see elves, we see trolls, goblins, we see, Gollum makes an appearance, as he does in the movies. Armies, there's humans, of course. And overall, Bilbo just has a journey. He has an experience that leads him to become this, go from being this stay-at-home loving, food-loving hobbit into this adventurer, this hero who will risk it all for the sake of his friends, and who will think of ingenious plans on the fly as and when they're in danger. And he just becomes somebody a lot more wise and a lot more profound and a lot more learned. So he doesn't lose that sense of home, that sense of being homely, but he does gain an awful lot more in the process. So definitely, it's definitely worth a read. It's very fun, it's very enjoyable, very light-hearted at the points, very whimsical. There's a lot of singing, a lot of songs, very musical. And yeah, the Audible version that I listened to was narrated by Andy Serkis, who plays Gollum in the movies, and he is just a perfect choice, especially for the scenes which contain Gollum. So yeah, he's definitely a perfect choice as narrator. 100% you should give that a listen slash a read. Definitely, I intend to read this to my son in a couple of years when he gets a bit older, because I think at the moment it's a bit too adult for him. But I fully intend, I have got a hard copy of this book at home. I fully intend to read it to him as a bedtime story every night when he gets to a couple of years older, because I feel like this, if I'd read this in my childhood, it would have amazed me so much. It would have been a lot more influential probably than the Harry Potter books, which really influenced me to read. So yeah, definitely go ahead, download it, get it on Kindle, get it on Audible, get it in hard copy, however you get it, however you get your reading fix. Check it out. That was The Hobbit. Out of 100, 95%. 100% classic.